How to respond to someone who asks, "Why is this important?"
We live in a very interesting era of history. We live at a time in which we see the collapse of Christianity in our Western world. We see the collapse of Christianity in America, said to be the greatest Christian nation on earth. We live in a time in which we see droves of young people leaving the church. In America, somewhere between 90 and 95% of students from church homes go to public schools. That's the government schools, secular schools. Statisticians have found out that of those students from church homes that go to public schools, 70%, even as high as 80%, will walk away from the church. We're losing the coming generations. But why? Answers in Genesis used America's research group to try to analyze what is happening and to ask questions, why are these people leaving the church? In fact, the statistical research we did showed that if you don't have these students by the end of middle school, you don't have about 44% of them, and you don't have them by the end of high school, you don't have about another 44% of them. The statistics bore out the fact that it was questions that they couldn't answer, questions that caused them to have doubt in regard to the Bible, doubt that has led to unbelief. That's what's causing them to walk away from the church. You see, we live in what's called a scientific age, a scientific era. And in this era of history, science supposedly has disproved the Bible. And there are all sorts of accusations that our children and young people hear today, such as Noah couldn't fit all the animals on the ark, and where did Cain get his wife? And what about the races of people? And what about the supposed millions of years? And what about all the ape men? There are all these topics. I mean, these particular things disprove the Bible. You can't trust the Bible. And sadly today, many churches are not giving answers to coming generations. In fact, for many of them, they're saying, don't worry about those questions as long as you trust in Jesus. But you see, the message of Jesus, the message of the gospel comes from the Bible. It comes from the words that are written in that book. It comes from the same book as Genesis 1 to 11. And if you can't trust Genesis 1 to 11, how can you trust the rest? And what's actually happened in our Western world, where we see the collapse of Christian morality, the collapse of the Christian structure, is that increasingly people no longer believe the Bible is the absolute authority of the Word of God. That's what we've lost, an understanding that the Bible is the absolute authority of the Word of God. We need to be giving answers to these generations. We need to be helping them understand that they can stand on the authority of the Word of God beginning in Genesis, that we can defend the Christian faith. There are answers to all those questions to show that the Bible's history in Genesis is true. That's why the morality, the doctrines, the gospel based in that history is true. We need to give answers so people know they can stand solidly on the authority of the Word of God.